I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was my son, Marcus. His voice sounded clipped, efficient, like he was checking items off a list. "Mum, we're leaving for Dubai tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the capital for the investment. The money's in your account. Bye." And just like that, he hung up. 43 years raising him, sacrificing everything, and he discarded me like junk mail. But I took a slow breath and smiled because there was something my dear son didn't know. My name is Lorraine Mitchell. I'm 68 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew my son. I'd become a widow 8 months ago. My husband, Vincent, passed away from a stroke while we were planting tomatoes in the backyard, just as we'd done every spring for 40 years. That morning, he'd kissed my cheek and said, "Another good year ahead of us, Lorraine." Those were his last words. Since then, Marcus had been more present in my life, or so I believed. He came by twice a week, helped me sort through Vincent's paperwork, drove me to appointments. He even insisted I update my will. "Mum, you need to make sure everything's organised now that you're alone," he'd say with that smile I thought was concern. But now I understood it was calculation. The beach house had been our dream. Vincent and I bought it when Marcus was 12, with decades of saved pennies and weekend shifts. Every summer we'd drive there, windows down, singing off-key to the radio. Marcus would bring friends, then girlfriends, then his wife, Simone. I'd cook massive breakfasts, wash sandy towels, sweep the porch at sunset. It was our family anchor. I never imagined he'd see it as just an asset to liquidate. And the car, that old Chevy sedan Vincent maintained like it was made of glass. He'd vacuum the interior every Saturday, change the oil precisely on schedule, park it in the same garage spot for 20 years. Marcus knew what that car meant to me. Vincent's reading glasses were still in the console. His favourite jazz CD was still in the player. When Marcus hung up, I stayed there on that hard plastic chair, surrounded by coughing strangers and outdated magazines. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something shifted inside me. A clarity I hadn't felt since Vincent's funeral. Because in that moment, I remembered something I'd completely forgotten. 5 days before he died, Vincent had handed me a sealed envelope. "Lorraine, put this in the lockbox in the closet. If something happens to me, open it when you're ready. Not right away. When you're truly ready." I tucked it away without much thought. After the funeral, drowning in grief and arrangements, I simply forgot about it. But it was there, waiting for me at home. Before I dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, please like and subscribe. It helps me keep sharing more. The nurse called me into the examination room. The doctor checked my blood pressure, listened to my heart, asked routine questions. "You're in good health for your age, Mrs. Mitchell. Just keep moving, eat well, stay connected to people." I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about that envelope, about the coldness in Marcus's voice, and about how Simone had probably orchestrated the entire thing. She'd never warmed to me, always saw me as outdated, irrelevant. I left the clinic and walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Marcus, but as I waited, watching traffic blur past, I couldn't stop the small smile forming on my lips. There was something almost poetic about this moment. My son believed he'd stripped me of everything valuable. What he didn't know was that Vincent, my brilliant Vincent, had always thought 3 steps ahead. The bus came. I sat by a window streaked with rain. The bus came. I sat by the window streaked with rain. The city rolled past, storefronts, construction sites, people hunched with umbrellas, everybody carried their own invisible burdens. I had mine too, and I was about to discover just how heavy it really was. When I got home, I went straight to the bedroom closet. I pulled down the lockbox from the top shelf, fingers trembling slightly as I entered the combination. Our wedding date. Inside was the manila envelope, exactly where I'd left it. My hands felt unsteady as I picked it up. I could feel multiple documents inside, papers that crinkled with importance. Vincent had written my name on the front in his precise engineer's handwriting. I sat on the bed we'd shared for 4 decades and took a long breath. Shadows were lengthening across the room, painting everything in shades of amber and grey. I opened the envelope slowly, like unwrapping something fragile. What I found inside changed everything I thought I knew about my life. But that discovery would have to wait, because what happened next would test everything I believed about family, loyalty, and justice. What I pulled from that envelope took my breath away completely. Legal documents, property deeds, investment certificates, bank statements with numbers that seemed impossible, and a letter, handwritten on Vincent's favourite cream paper, the kind he used for important correspondence. My dearest Lorraine, if you're reading this, I'm no longer beside you. Forgive me for keeping secrets, but I wanted to protect you from worry. Over the years, I invested every spare dollar we saved. We don't just own the beach house, we own 4 other properties. We own the apartment complex where Marcus and Simone live. We have shares in 2 companies that are worth more than you can imagine. You are wealthy, my love. You always were in the ways that matter most. Now you are on paper, too. My hands shook as I sorted through the documents. Deeds to rental properties in 3 different neighbourhoods. A small commercial building downtown that housed a coffee shop and bookstore. A lakefront cabin 2 hours north. And yes, the 12-unit apartment building where Marcus lived with Simone in the penthouse unit. Vincent had been the silent owner for 9 years, but had structured everything through a holding company I'd never heard of. According to the papers, I was the sole heir of that company. Everything transferred to me automatically upon his death. There were also bank statements for accounts I never knew existed, numbers with too many zeros. Vincent had worked as a civil engineer for 40 years, steady and unassuming. But apparently, he'd also been investing with remarkable skill. Every bonus, every tax refund, every penny we didn't spend on necessities, he'd multiplied it in silence, and I'd known nothing. In the letter, Vincent explained that he'd kept it all secret because he didn't want me to worry about finances, or for Marcus to know our real situation. You know our son, Lorraine. If Marcus knew we had substantial wealth, his character would change. I want him to love us for who we are, not what we have. I want him to build his own life. I've watched too many wealthy parents ruin their children with premature inheritance. Let him believe we lived simply because we were simple people. It'll make him stronger. The irony cut like broken glass. Our son had abandoned me thinking we had nothing, when in reality we'd had everything. Vincent had protected Marcus from wealth to build his character, and Marcus had responded by stealing from his supposedly poor widowed mother the moment it was convenient. That night, sleep was impossible. I walked through the house touching things: the bookshelf Vincent built by hand, the kitchen table where we'd solved 1,000 crossword puzzles, the windowsill where I still kept his favourite coffee mug. I looked at family photos on the wall, especially the one of Marcus at 7, missing his 2 front teeth sitting on Vincent's lap at the beach house. Both of them laughing at something I'd said behind the camera. Where did that boy go? When did he become this person who could discard his mother with a 2-minute phone call? The phone rang at 8 the next morning. Marcus again. His voice had shifted, softer now, almost conciliatory. "Mum, hey, I wanted to follow up about yesterday. We transferred your portion of the proceeds into your account. It's not a huge amount, but it should cover your expenses for several months while you find something smaller." My portion? I kept my voice steady. My portion of what, Marcus? The house and the car, Mum. Obviously, we weren't going to take everything. We gave you 40%. That's more than fair. We need the capital for this Dubai opportunity. Simone's company is expanding there, and if we don't invest now, we'll miss the window. 40% of my own things. How generous. I see. When do you leave? Tonight. Red-eye flight. We'll be gone at least 8 months. Maybe longer if the business takes off the way we expect. But don't worry, Mum. When we get back, we'll help you find a nice little apartment. Something manageable for someone your age. Something manageable for someone my age. As if he knew anything about my age, my needs, my capabilities. That's very thoughtful, Marcus. I knew you'd understand. You've always been so reasonable. We really appreciate your support. Love you, Mum. and he was gone again. Just like that. I stood holding the phone, and for the first time in months, I laughed. Actually laughed out loud, the sound echoing through the empty house. The situation was so absurd, it circled back to comedy. My son had robbed me, dismissed me, patronised me with unbearable condescension, all to fund an overseas adventure that would probably collapse within months. But what hurt most wasn't the money. It was the ease with which he'd erased me from his life. 43 years of my existence dedicated to him. Scraped knees I bandaged, nightmares I soothed, college tuition I worked double shifts to afford, and he'd deleted me with the emotional weight of cancelling a subscription. I checked my bank account online. Sure enough, they'd deposited an amount that probably seemed generous to them. They'd sold the beach house for far less than market value, obviously desperate for quick cash. And they'd sold Vincent's car to a scrap dealer for almost nothing. That afternoon, I watched from my living room window as Marcus and Simone loaded suitcases into a black car service sedan. She wore a designer coat, the kind that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He carried 2 enormous hard-shell cases. They were laughing about something, relaxed, excited. They looked like lottery winners heading off to claim their prize. Neither of them glanced toward my house. No final goodbye. No wave. Nothing. When the car disappeared around the corner, I sat at the kitchen table with chamomile tea and Vincent's documents spread before me. I had decisions to make. I could call a lawyer immediately, reclaim everything they'd stolen and destroy them with legal action. But something told me there was a better way, a more educational way. I found the business card Vincent had left in the envelope. Hugh Dalton, attorney at law. If you need help with any of this, call Hugh. He knows everything. He'll take care of you. I picked up the phone and dialed. A receptionist answered. Dalton and Associates. This is Lorraine Mitchell. I need to speak with Hugh Dalton about my late husband's estate. Of course, Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Dalton has been expecting your call. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I'll be there. That night, for the first time since Vincent died, I slept soundly. I dreamed of him. We were young again, dancing in our first apartment, the one with the leaky faucet and the neighbours who played saxophone at midnight. When the music ended, he pulled me close and whispered, "Time to stand up for yourself, Lorraine. Time to show them what you're made of." I woke with absolute clarity. For the first time since Vincent's death, I had purpose. I was going to reclaim what was mine. But not in the way Marcus expected. Not in any way he could anticipate. And by the time he understood what had happened, it would be far too late to undo. Hugh Dalton's office occupied the corner of a renovated historic building downtown, all exposed brick and tall windows flooding the space with morning light. The receptionist, a woman about my age with kind eyes, smiled as I entered. "Mrs. Mitchell, Mr. Dalton is ready for you. Can I get you coffee or tea?" "Tea would be lovely, thank you." She led me down a hallway lined with framed degrees and bar certifications. Hugh's office was exactly what I'd expected. Organised chaos, legal books stacked on every surface, a massive oak desk covered with files and yellow legal pads. Hugh himself stood when I entered, a man in his early 60s with silver hair and the slightly rumpled look of someone who cared more about substance than appearance. "Lorraine." He came around the desk and took both my hands in his. "I'm so sorry about Vincent. He was one of the best men I ever knew." "Thank you, Hugh. He spoke highly of you as well." "Please, sit. I've been waiting for you to call. Vincent made me promise to give you time, but I've been hoping you'd reach out." He settled back behind his desk and pulled a thick file from a drawer. "I assume you found the envelope?" "I did, yesterday. And I assume something happened to prompt you to open it." I told him everything. Marcus's phone call, the sale of the house and car, the 40%, the casual dismissal. Hugh's expression darkened as I spoke, his jaw tightening. "That son of a..." He caught himself. "I'm sorry, Lorraine. I know he's your son. But what he did is not just morally reprehensible. It's legally actionable. He had no right to sell any of those properties. I want them back, Hugh. All of it. But I need to do this carefully. Hugh opened the file and spread documents across his desk. Lorraine, I need you to understand the full scope of what Vincent built. It's more than you might realise from those papers alone. For the next hour, Hugh walked me through Vincent's financial empire. My husband hadn't just been a savvy investor, he'd been a genius at it. The 4 rental properties generated steady income. The commercial building downtown had tripled in value over the past decade. The apartment complex where Marcus lived was worth nearly $2 million in today's market. The investment accounts held diversified portfolios that had weathered recessions and grown consistently. The lakefront cabin sat on land that developers were desperate to buy. All told, Vincent had accumulated assets worth approximately $7 million. $7 million. I sat in stunned silence, trying to reconcile this number with the life I'd lived. We'd always been comfortable but modest. We'd clipped coupons. We'd bought generic brands. We'd driven the same car for 15 years. Why? I finally asked. Why did Vincent live like we were barely middle class when we had all this? Hugh smiled sadly. Because Vincent believed that wealth changes people. He watched his own father become someone unrecognizable after inheriting money. He watched friends' families destroy themselves fighting over inheritances. He wanted you both to live authentically, not shaped by money's influence. And he wanted Marcus to build his own character without the corruption of easy wealth. But I could have stopped worrying. About medical bills, about retirement, about... Could you have? Hugh interrupted gently.
Lorraine, would you have been the same person? Would Marcus? Vincent believed the struggles you faced together made you stronger, made your family more real. I thought about this, about the satisfaction of saving for the beach house, about teaching Marcus the value of work by making him get summer jobs, about Vincent and me planning budgets together at this very kitchen table. Had those struggles been unnecessary, or had they been the foundation of something more valuable than money? Vincent left very specific instructions, Hugh continued. He wanted you to live your life authentically for as long as possible. He knew that eventually you'd need to know about the money, but he hoped you'd discover it at the right time, when you were strong enough to handle it without it changing who you are. And Marcus? Vincent's instructions about Marcus were very clear. He's not to inherit anything until he's 45, and only if he's demonstrated financial responsibility and good character. If not, the assets go to charity. Marcus turns 40 next month. I know. Which means he has 5 more years to prove himself, or to disqualify himself completely. I understood then what Vincent had done. He'd created a test, not for me, but for our son. And Marcus was currently failing spectacularly. What do you want to do, Lorraine? Hugh asked. I want to recover the beach house and the car. I want to secure complete control of all the properties. And I want Marcus to understand what he's done. But I don't want to simply punish him. I want him to learn something. Hugh leaned back in his chair, studying me. You know, Vincent told me that if anyone could handle wealth with wisdom, it would be you. He said you had the strongest moral compass of anyone he'd ever known. I see now he was right. Can you help me? Absolutely. The beach house sale is fraudulent and easily reversed. The car's more complicated since it was in your name and he had power of attorney, but we can recover it. As for the rest, all the properties are already yours through the holding company. We just need to make some administrative updates to give you direct control. How long will this take? 3 to 4 weeks for everything to be finalized. But Lorraine, I need to ask, what's your ultimate goal here? Do you want to prosecute Marcus for fraud? Do you want him evicted from his apartment? What outcome are you seeking? I thought about this carefully. About the little boy with missing teeth sitting on his father's lap. About the man who'd just stolen from his widowed mother without hesitation. About the person Marcus could still become if he learned the right lessons. I want him to understand consequences, I said finally. I want him to experience what he put me through, and then if he shows genuine change, I want to give him a chance at redemption, but on very different terms than he expects. Hugh smiled. Vincent said you'd say something like that. He left one more letter for you to be delivered only after we had this conversation. He said you'd need it for what comes next. He handed me another envelope, this one sealed with wax. I opened it there in Hugh's office. Vincent's handwriting covered 2 pages. My dearest Lorraine, if Hugh has given you this letter, you've discovered everything, and you're making plans. I know you're hurting. I know our son has disappointed you. But remember, people can change. I did. When I met you, I was arrogant, selfish, focused only on my own success. You taught me what really matters. Give Marcus that same chance, not by making things easy, but by showing him the truth about himself and about what he's lost. Be strong, my love. Be wise. And remember that the greatest gifts we can give our children are not comfort and wealth, but truth and character. With eternal love, Vincent. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my purse. Okay, Hugh, let's begin. 3 weeks passed in strange suspension.
Publicly, I was the abandoned widow everyone pitied. Aurora, my neighbour, brought casseroles. The ladies from church called to check on me. The mailman asked if I was managing okay. I played the part perfectly, grateful, humble, just barely holding things together. Privately, I was a woman orchestrating a complex operation. Hugh called every few days with updates. The beach house sale had been nullified. The buyers, an innocent young couple, got their money back without complications. The house was mine again. The car had been traced to a junkyard purchased for $200. Hugh's paralegal bought it back for $500 and had it towed to a restoration shop. The owner felt terrible when he learned the story, Hugh told me. He's doing the restoration work at cost. Says any man who maintained a car that well for 20 years deserves respect. I was also learning to manage the properties. The rental houses had a management company handling day-to-day operations, but I reviewed the reports, studied the finances, made decisions about maintenance and tenant issues. The commercial building needed a new roof. I approved the expense. One of the rental properties had a vacancy. I interviewed the prospective tenant myself. It was terrifying and exhilarating. For 40 years I'd managed a household budget. Now I was managing a small business empire, and I was good at it. But the most interesting development was the apartment complex where Marcus lived. The building manager, a capable woman named Teresa, had no idea I was the new owner. She'd been dealing with a property management company for years. When I contacted her directly, identifying myself as the owner, she was shocked. Mrs. Mitchell. But I thought, the company said, things have changed, Teresa. I'd like to meet with you to discuss the building operations, and I need to understand the current status of all leases. We met at a coffee shop near the building. Teresa brought thick binders full of documents. As we reviewed them, a troubling picture emerged. Unit 12, the penthouse, Teresa said carefully. That's been complicated. In what way? The tenants. I believe they're related to you. Your son and daughter-in-law? Yes. They're 3 months behind on rent. The previous management company told me to be patient, that the situation would resolve itself, but it's now affecting the building's cash flow. We have maintenance issues we can't address because we're short on operating funds. 3 months. Marcus and Simone had stopped paying rent 3 months ago, right around the time Vincent died. How much do they owe? $9,400, and this month's rent is due in 5 days. I did quick math. $9,000. Marcus had just sold my beach house for $80,000 and my car for almost nothing. He had money. He simply chose not to pay rent in a building he assumed belonged to a distant corporate entity that wouldn't chase him aggressively. Teresa, I want you to follow the standard lease enforcement procedure. No special treatment. If the rent isn't paid within the legal grace period, begin eviction proceedings. Teresa looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Mitchell, I understand this is your right, but he's your son. Are you sure? I'm certain. Treat them exactly like any other tenant. That night I called my sister, Diane, who lived 2 states away. I'd been putting off this conversation, but I needed to talk to someone who understood the full complexity of the situation. "Lorraine, I've been worried about you. Marcus told me you were struggling financially after Vincent died. He said you might need to move in with him and Simone for a while." I laughed bitterly. "He said what?" "That you were having trouble managing on your own, that he was worried about you. Are you okay? Do you need help?" I told Diane everything. The phone call, the stolen properties, Vincent's secret wealth, my plan. There was a long silence on the other end. "That manipulative..." Diane's voice shook with rage. "Lorraine, I'm coming there. I'm getting on a plane tomorrow." "No, Diane, I need to handle this myself. But you shouldn't have to face this alone." "I'm not alone. I have Vincent's wisdom. I have good legal counsel. And I have something Marcus never counted on. I have the truth." We talked for another hour. Diane understood what I was trying to do, even if she didn't fully agree with my methods. "Just promise me one thing," she said before hanging up. "Promise you won't let him hurt you again." "He can't hurt me anymore, Diane. He already did the worst thing possible. Everything from here is just consequences." If you're wondering what happens next, you need to hear this. People who don't subscribe miss the ending. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. Hit that subscribe button now. The next morning, Aurora knocked on my door. She had that particular expression people get when they're bursting with gossip but trying to pretend they're not. "Lorraine, dear, have you heard from Marcus lately?" "Not since he left for Dubai. Why?" "Well, I was talking to Phyllis, who works at the bank downtown, and she mentioned something about Marcus having some kind of financial trouble. Something about bounced checks." This was news. "Bounced checks?" "Phyllis said she probably shouldn't mention it, but she's worried about you. She thought you should know your son might be having problems." After Aurora left, I called Hugh. "Can you find out about Marcus's financial situation? Discreetly. I can make some inquiries, give me a few days." Those few days turned up information that painted a disturbing picture. Marcus had accumulated significant debt over the past 2 years. Credit cards maxed out, a car loan 3 payments behind. The bounced checks Aurora mentioned were to cover cash advances from one credit card to pay minimums on others. The classic debt spiral. And here's where it got interesting. Simone apparently knew nothing about this. Marcus had hidden the debt from her, just as he'd hidden it from me. The Dubai investment opportunity was real. Simone's company was expanding there. But Marcus's urgent need for cash had nothing to do with investing in her business, and everything to do with covering his own financial chaos before she discovered it. He'd stolen from his supposedly poor widowed mother to pay off debt and hide his failures from his wife. Not to build a future, but to paper over a crumbling past. "Hugh, this changes things," I said when he delivered the full report. "How so?" "Marcus isn't just selfish. He's desperate, and desperate people make terrible decisions. We need to accelerate the timeline." "What are you thinking?" "I want him to come home to find everything changed, not gradually, all at once. Can we make that happen?" Hugh considered this. "The eviction notice is going out next week regardless. The beach house is already recovered. Your control of all properties is finalized as of yesterday. We could inform him of everything simultaneously." "Do it. Send everything to his Dubai address. Let him get all the news at once." "Lorraine, are you sure? This is going to be a massive shock." He delivered a massive shock to me with a 2-minute phone call while I sat in a doctor's waiting room. He can handle an envelope full of legal documents. "All right, I'll prepare everything." That night, I drove out to the beach house. The restoration company Hugh hired had done minimal work. Changed the locks, fixed a broken shutter, cleaned thoroughly. Otherwise, it looked exactly as Vincent and I had left it. I walked through the rooms, touching things. The kitchen table where we'd played cards. The porch where we'd watched sunsets. The bedroom where we'd whispered plans for retirement. Marcus had tried to erase this. Tried to convert 40 years of memories into quick cash. But he'd forgotten one thing. You can't sell what isn't yours. You can't sell what isn't yours. and you can't erase what lives in the heart. I sat on the porch steps as the sun dropped toward the ocean, painting the sky in shades of coral and gold. Vincent used to say that sunsets reminded him that endings could be beautiful, that every closing was also a beginning. "I'm doing this right, aren't I?" I asked the empty air. "Tell me I'm doing this right." The ocean answered with its eternal rhythm, waves rolling in, pulling back, returning again, constant, reliable, true. I locked up the house and drove home in Vincent's restored car. The mechanic had done remarkable work. The engine purred. The interior smelled of leather conditioner and Vincent's favourite coffee. The jazz CD played softly as I drove through the darkness. For the first time since Vincent died, I felt like myself again. Not the grieving widow, not the abandoned mother. Just myself. Strong, clear, ready for whatever came next. 6 weeks after Marcus left for Dubai, my phone rang at 11 o'clock at night. I was reading in bed, half asleep. When I saw his name on the screen, I was suddenly wide awake. "Mom?" His voice sounded strained, hoarse. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Something's happened." "Marcus, aren't you in Dubai? It must be morning there." "I'm at the airport, in Atlanta. Our connecting flight. We're coming home. We just landed." "I thought you were staying 8 months." "Things changed. Mum, I got some letters. Legal letters. I don't understand what's happening. They're saying I have to vacate my apartment. They're saying the beach house sale was fraudulent. They're saying, Mum, none of this makes sense." I let the silence stretch, let him feel the weight of his confusion. "Marcus, I don't understand. What letters?" "From a law firm, Dalton and Associates. Do you know them?" I might have heard the name. Vincent used them for some business matters. "These letters, they're claiming I stole property. But that's insane. I sold your house because we both knew you couldn't maintain it, and the apartment eviction must be a mistake. I've lived there for 6 years. Have you been paying rent, Marcus?" A pause. It's complicated. There was a misunderstanding with the management company. But this says I have 7 days to pay everything I owe, or I'll be evicted. 7 days? And I don't even know who owns the building now. The letters are signed by someone named Lorraine Mitchell. Another pause. Longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Mum, that's your name. But there must be multiple Lorraine Mitchells. That's not an uncommon name. This has to be a coincidence. Perhaps you should contact the law firm directly, Marcus. Clear up any confusion. I tried. It's the middle of the night here. I left a voicemail. Mum, are you okay? You sound strange. I'm fine, dear. Just tired. It's late. Right. Yes. Sorry. I'll call you tomorrow after I talk to the lawyers. There's obviously been some kind of identity theft or mistake. We'll get this sorted out. I'm sure you will. Safe travels, Marcus. I hung up before he could respond. My heart was pounding. Not from anxiety, but from something else. Something that felt almost like anticipation. The next morning, Hugh called. Lorraine, your son contacted my office at 7 a.m. He's demanding an emergency meeting. I scheduled him for 2 this afternoon. Do you want to be there? No. Let him go through this himself, but call me afterward. The day passed slowly. I tried to distract myself with household tasks, but I kept watching the clock. At 4:30, Hugh finally called. Well, that was one of the more difficult meetings I've had in my career. Tell me everything. He arrived with Simone. Both of them dressed expensively, both of them clearly expecting this to be a simple misunderstanding they could resolve by being important and demanding. I laid out the facts methodically. The beach house belonged to you through Vincent's estate. The sale was fraudulent. The apartment building belongs to you through the holding company. The eviction is legitimate because they're 4 months behind on rent. And you are, in fact, the Lorraine Mitchell who owns these properties. How did he react? Denial at first, then anger. He accused me of manipulation, of lying, of conspiring against him. Simone was quieter, but I could see her mind working. She's the sharper of the two. She started asking detailed questions about the holding company structure, about when you took ownership, about Vincent's estate. She figured it out faster than Marcus did. Figured what out? That Vincent had money all along, that you've been wealthy this entire time. That Marcus sold your beach house thinking he was taking advantage of a poor widow, when in reality he was committing fraud against someone who could afford the best lawyers in the state. What did he say when he realized? He went silent, completely silent, just sat there staring at the documents. Simone asked if there was any way to resolve this without legal action. I said that would be up to you. Marcus asked if he could speak with you. I said you weren't ready for that conversation yet. How did it end? I gave them copies of everything. The holding company documents showing you own their building, the eviction notice, the fraud complaint on the beach house sale, the documentation showing they owe 4 months of rent plus late fees, and I gave them one additional document that Vincent instructed me to provide if this situation ever arose. What document? Vincent's letter explaining why he structured things the way he did, why he kept the money secret, why he wanted Marcus to build his own character. The letter ends with a paragraph that essentially says, if Marcus ever stole from you or betrayed you, it would prove he'd failed the test of character, and that Vincent's greatest fear was that his son would value money over integrity. My eyes filled with tears. Vincent knew. He knew this might happen. He knew human nature, Lorraine. He hoped for the best but planned for the worst. The letter destroyed Marcus. He started crying right there in my office, asking why his father didn't trust him, why his father set him up to fail. Set him up to fail? Vincent gave him every opportunity to succeed. I said the same thing. I told him that his father gave him a normal childhood, a good education, and the freedom to build his own life. That these were gifts, not traps. Simone agreed with me. She said, Marcus, your father didn't set you up for anything. You made your own choices. That's when they left. I sat in silence, processing all of this. My son crying in a lawyer's office, confronting the reality of his own actions. His wife beginning to see him clearly for perhaps the first time. Lorraine, he's going to call you. Soon. You need to decide how you want to handle that conversation. I'll handle it when it comes. That call came 3 hours later. It was Marcus, but he sounded broken. Mum, I need to see you. Please, I need to explain. There's nothing to explain, Marcus. I read the documents, I understand everything perfectly. No, you don't. You don't understand the pressure I was under, the debts. I understand that you stole from your widowed mother. I understand that you sold property that didn't belong to you. I understand that you haven't paid rent in 4 months while living in my building. Your building? God, Mum, why didn't you tell me? Why did you and Dad keep all this secret? Because your father wanted you to become a man of character. He wanted you to build your own life, not live off his accomplishments. He wanted you to value things that actually matter. By lying to me? By pretending you were poor? We never lied, Marcus. We simply lived the life we wanted to live. We didn't owe you a financial disclosure. You're not entitled to know your parents' assets. There was a long silence. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. Can I come see you? Tomorrow? Not yet. You need to handle your situation first. You have 7 days to pay what you owe or vacate the apartment. You need to figure out what you're going to do. I don't have $9,000, Mum. I don't have anything. The Dubai opportunity fell through. Simone's company decided not to expand after all. We spent money we didn't have on plane tickets and hotel deposits. We're broke. This was the moment I'd been building toward. My son, finally facing the reality of his choices. Then you need to make some decisions, Marcus, just like you thought I would have to do when you took everything from me. Mum, please. Goodbye, Marcus. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my living room, my hands trembling. This was harder than I'd expected, hearing the pain in his voice, knowing I had the power to fix everything with a simple decision. But Vincent's letter echoed in my mind. The greatest gifts we can give our children are not comfort and wealth, but truth and character. 5 days passed. Marcus called repeatedly. I let every call go to voicemail. The messages devolved from anger to desperation to something that sounded like genuine remorse. Mum, I know I don't deserve your help. I know what I did was unforgivable. But Simone and I are staying in a motel. We can't even afford that much longer. Please, just talk to me. Tell me what I can do to make this right. Aurora reported seeing them. Lorraine, your son was at the grocery store yesterday. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted. He was buying ramen noodles and bread. Phyllis from the bank says he's been trying to get a loan, but his credit is destroyed. I nodded but said nothing. Aren't you going to help him? I am helping him, Aurora, just not in the way you think. On the 6th day, Simone called. Not Marcus. Simone. Her voice was calm, controlled, nothing like Marcus's desperate messages. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Simone. I'm calling to tell you that I'm leaving Marcus. I've filed for legal separation. I wanted you to hear it from me directly. I'm sorry to hear that, Simone. Don't be. I should have done this years ago. I've been reviewing our finances, really looking at them for the first time. Marcus has been lying to me for our entire marriage. About money, about debts, about everything. What he did to you was the last straw, but it wasn't the only thing. Where will you go? My sister's in California. I have a job offer there. I'm leaving tomorrow. But Mrs. Mitchell, I want you to know something. What you're doing, making Marcus face consequences, it's the right thing. He's never had to face real consequences before. His father protected him. I protected him. You protected him. Maybe if someone had done this earlier, he wouldn't be the person he is now. Simone, do you think people can change? She paused. I think some people can. But only if they want to badly enough. And only if they have a reason to. Maybe this will be Marcus's reason. I hope so. For his sake. After she hung up, I sat holding the phone. Marcus's wife was leaving him. His life was collapsing completely, and I had the power to stop it, to fix everything, to be the rescuing mother I'd always been. But Vincent's voice whispered in my memory, people can change. I did. When I met you, I was arrogant, selfish, focused only on my own success. You taught me what really matters. Give Marcus that same chance, not by making things easy, but by showing him the truth about himself. The 7th day arrived. Marcus showed up at my door at 8 in the morning. I watched through the window as he got out of a battered car. Not his luxury sedan, something he'd probably borrowed or rented. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled. His face was drawn. He knocked, waited, knocked again. I opened the door but stood in the doorway, not inviting him in. Mum, Marcus, can I come in? Please. I stepped aside. He walked past me into the living room he'd grown up in, looking around as if seeing it for the first time. Or maybe as if seeing it for the last time. Simone left me, he said without preamble. She's going to California. She took everything in our joint account. I couldn't even argue because none of it was my money anyway. It was all hers. I know, she called me. She called you? He looked stunned. What did she say? That you'd been lying to her. That this was the last straw. He collapsed onto the sofa, head in his hands. I've destroyed everything. My marriage, my relationship with you, my credit, my reputation, everything. Yes. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. Is that all you have to say? Yes? What do you want me to say, Marcus? That it's okay? That I forgive you? That I'll fix everything and we can pretend this never happened? I want you to tell me how to make this right. I want to go back and undo what I did. Mum, I want to not be this person anymore. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. Not apology born from desperation. Not remorse born from consequences. But genuine recognition of who he'd become. Tell me something, Marcus. When you made that phone call 6 weeks ago, when you told me you'd sold my house and my car, did you feel anything? Any guilt? Any hesitation? He was quiet for a long time. No. I felt relief. I thought I'd solved my problems. I thought you'd be upset for a while, but you'd get over it. You always got over things before. And now? Now I understand what Dad was trying to teach me. Why he lived the way he did. Why he kept the money secret. He knew. He knew I wasn't ready for it. He knew I hadn't developed the character to handle wealth responsibly. And he was right. What are you going to do, Marcus? Today is the 7th day. You need to vacate the apartment or pay everything you owe. I can't pay. I have $300 to my name. I'll vacate today. I'll find somewhere to go. Maybe I can stay at a shelter for a while. Find a job. Start over. A shelter? Do I have another choice? I looked at my son, really looked at him. The boy who'd sat on Vincent's lap at the beach house. The teenager who'd come to me crying when his first girlfriend broke his heart. The young man who'd called me after getting his first promotion. All of those people were still in there somewhere, buried under years of bad decisions and easy escapes. You have one other choice, I said carefully. You can stay here, in your old room, under very specific conditions. Hope flickered in his eyes, then died. You don't want me here, not after what I did. It's not about what I want, Marcus. It's about what you need. And what you need is to rebuild your life from the ground up. No shortcuts, no bailouts, no easy escapes. What are the conditions? You get a job. Any job. I don't care if it's washing dishes or cleaning offices. You work full-time. You pay me rent, $300 a month. You pay back every penny you took from me by selling my property. And you go to therapy to address whatever drove you to make these choices. That's it. That's it. But Marcus, if you lie to me once, even once, you're out. If you miss a rent payment, you're out. If you don't follow through on therapy, you're out. This is your last chance, not because you deserve it, but because your father believed people could change. I'm honoring that belief. He started crying again, but these tears were different. Not self-pity, something deeper. I don't deserve this. No, you don't. But that's what grace is, getting what you don't deserve. Your father taught me that. Marcus moved into his old room that afternoon. It was exactly as he'd left it when he moved out at 22, teenage posters on the walls, trophies from high school on the shelves, a twin bed with the same blue comforter. 18 years later, he was back where he started. It's smaller than I remembered, he said, standing in the doorway with his 2 suitcases. Everything's smaller when you're an adult, I replied. The first week was awkward. We moved around each other like strangers, overly polite, careful not to intrude. Marcus spent most of his time in his room, applying for jobs online. I listened to him through the walls, his voice getting more discouraged with each rejection call. On the 8th day, he came to the kitchen where I was making coffee. Mum, I got a job. At a warehouse, loading trucks. It's night shift, minimum wage, but it's something. That's good, Marcus. Yeah. He poured himself coffee, hands shaking slightly. I start tomorrow night. I haven't done physical labor since high school summer jobs. You'll adjust. He looked at me, really looked at me. Why are you doing this? Really? Because your father asked me to. And because despite everything, you're still my son. If you're wondering whether Marcus can actually change, subscribe now and watch what happens. Most people give up at this point, but the next part will surprise you. Marcus started work. He'd leave at 10 p.m. and come home at 6:30 in the morning, exhausted, smelling of sweat and cardboard. He'd shower, eat something, sleep until late afternoon, then do it again. His hands developed blisters that became calluses. He lost weight. The expensive clothes Simone had bought him were replaced with cheap work jeans and t-shirts. Aurora noticed. Lorraine, I saw Marcus leaving for work last night. Is he really working at the warehouse on Industrial Boulevard? He is. But he's your son. He's 40 years old. Don't you think? I think he's learning what it means to earn his keep, just like everyone else does. 2 weeks into his new job, Marcus came home with his first paycheck. He sat at the kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. $483, he said quietly. After taxes, I worked 60 hours for $483. That's how most people live, Marcus. How did you and Dad do this? How did you raise me on wages like this? We were careful. We prioritized. We didn't spend money we didn't have. He pulled $300 from the envelope and handed it to me. Rent. I'm a week early, but I wanted to pay it as soon as I could. I took the money. It was more meaningful than he knew. Not because I needed it, but because he'd earned it with sweat and time and effort. It represented something real. Thank you, Marcus. I also found a therapist. She has a sliding scale for low-income clients, $50 a session. I scheduled my first appointment for next week. I'm proud of you. He looked surprised. You are? Yes. You're doing what you said you'd do. That matters. The therapy sessions were difficult. I could tell by the way he came home afterward, quiet, introspective, sometimes visibly upset. But he kept going, every week, without fail. One evening, about 6 weeks after he'd moved back in, he asked if he could talk to me. We sat on the back porch where Vincent used to tend his tomato plants. My therapist asked me to do something. She wants me to make a complete accounting of all the ways I've hurt people, not just you, but everyone, and then to make amends where possible. That sounds like a good exercise. It's harder than I thought. The list is long, Mom. Really long. And some things I can't fix. Like Simone. She won't take my calls. I don't blame her, but I wish I could at least apologize properly. Sometimes our apologies aren't for the other person. Sometimes they're for ourselves. To acknowledge what we did wrong and commit to doing better. Dad used to say things like that. Wise things I didn't understand when he was alive. He'd be glad you're understanding them now. Would he? Would he be proud of where I am? 40 years old, living with my mom, working minimum wage, divorced. He'd be proud that you're facing your mistakes instead of running from them. That was what he wanted most, for you to develop real character, not the appearance of success. Marcus was quiet for a long time, watching the sun set over the neighbour's roof. I found something in Dad's things, in the boxes in the garage. His journal from the year before he died. He wrote about me, about being worried I'd never grow up, about hoping something would happen to wake me up before it was too late. He loved you deeply, Marcus. The worry came from love. He wrote that the worst thing a parent can do is protect their child from consequences. That every time you rescue someone from the results of their bad choices, you rob them of the chance to learn. He said he hoped he'd taught me enough that I'd never need to learn the hard way. Tears ran down Marcus's face. But I did need to learn the hard way, and he knew it. He set this all up knowing I might fail the test, knowing you'd have to be the one to teach me what he couldn't. Your father was wise. I miss him so much, and I'm so ashamed that it took losing everything to finally understand what he was trying to teach me. I put my hand on his shoulder. Growth often comes from our lowest moments, Marcus. That doesn't make the pain less real, but it can make it meaningful. 3 months passed. Marcus kept his job, paid his rent on time, went to therapy every week. I watched him transform gradually, not into someone different, but into someone more real. The performance fell away. The pretense. He stopped trying to impress people and started just being himself. One Saturday morning, he asked if he could talk to me about something serious. We sat at the kitchen table with coffee, the way Vincent and I used to do when we had important decisions to make. I want to pay you back for the beach house, he said. I've been doing math. At my current wages, saving every penny beyond basics, it would take me about 8 years. But I want to do it, even if it takes 20 years. Marcus, that's not necessary. Yes, it is. What I did was theft. The fact that your family doesn't make it less wrong. I need to make restitution. All right, we can work out a payment plan. There's something else. I've been thinking about the beach house, about all the summers we spent there. I want to ask you something and I'll understand if the answer is no. What is it? Could we go there, together? I need to see it again. I need to remember what it felt like before I ruined everything. I considered this carefully. The beach house held complicated memories now, but maybe that's exactly why we needed to return to it. This weekend, we'll drive up Saturday morning. The drive took 2 hours. Marcus was quiet most of the way, watching the landscape change from city to suburbs to coastal highway. When we pulled into the familiar driveway, he let out a long breath. It looks exactly the same. I haven't changed anything inside either. We walked through together. Marcus moved from room to room slowly, touching things. The kitchen counter where Vincent taught him to make pancakes. The living room where we played board games on rainy days. The porch where he'd spent summer evenings reading comics and eating ice cream. I remember being so happy here, he said quietly. I remember thinking this was what life was supposed to be. Family, simplicity, being together. It can be that again, in time. Can it, after what I did? That depends on you, Marcus. Whether you learn from this, whether you become the person your father hoped you'd be. We sat on the porch watching the ocean. The rhythm of the waves was hypnotic, eternal. After a long silence, Marcus spoke again. My therapist says I need to forgive myself, but I don't know how. Every time I think about that phone call, telling you I'd sold this place, talking to you like you were an inconvenience, I feel sick. Forgiveness isn't erasure, Marcus. It's not pretending something didn't happen. It's accepting that it did happen, understanding why, and choosing to move forward differently. How do I do that? By continuing to do what you're doing, working, growing, becoming someone you can respect. He wiped his eyes. I got a promotion at the warehouse, shift supervisor. It's only $2 more an hour, but they said I'm reliable, that I work harder than guys half my age. It felt good to hear that. I'm sure it did. And I've been saving money, not just for paying you back. I'm taking an online class in supply chain management. I thought maybe I could work my way up, maybe eventually manage a warehouse instead of just working in one. This was exactly what Vincent had hoped for. Not handed success, but earned progress. Not shortcuts, but real growth. Your father would be very proud of you right now. I hope so. I hope somewhere he can see that I'm finally getting it, finally understanding what matters. We stayed at the beach house until sunset. Before we left, Marcus asked if he could take one photo, just the porch, with the ocean behind it. To remind me, he said, of what I almost lost and what I'm working to deserve. 6 months after Marcus moved back in, Hugh called with unexpected news. Lorraine, there's been a development. Someone's been asking questions about your properties, specifically about the holding company structure Vincent created. Who? A private investigator, working for Simone, apparently. She's trying to understand the full scope of Vincent's estate. I think she's wondering if she has any claim to assets from her marriage to Marcus. Does she? No. Marcus never had ownership of anything. He has no assets to split. But I think she's more curious than litigious. She's trying to understand what really happened. Should I be concerned? I don't think so. But I wanted you to be aware. That evening, Simone called. Her voice was different than the last time we'd spoken. Less angry, more contemplative. Mrs. Mitchell, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I've been thinking about everything that happened, about Marcus, about your family, about the choices we all made. I don't mind at all, Simone. How are you? I'm well. The job in California worked out. I'm actually happy for the first time in years, but I've been carrying guilt about how I left things, about abandoning Marcus when he was at his lowest. You did what you needed to do for yourself. That's not abandonment. Maybe, But I've been watching his social media. He's still working at that warehouse, still living with you. Part of me expected him to fall apart completely or to run away again. But he's staying. He's facing it. He is. Is he really changing? Or is this just another performance? I think this time it's real, but only time will tell for certain. Mrs. Mitchell, can I ask you something? The way you handled this whole situation, letting him think you were poor, letting him steal from you, then revealing the truth and making him face consequences, was that planned? Did you deliberately let him hit bottom? I let him experience the natural consequences of his choices, with support, but without rescue. That's incredibly brave. Most parents would have just fixed everything. Fixing everything would have fixed nothing. Marcus needed to learn lessons his father and I never taught him. Hard lessons. Well, for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. And I hope Marcus becomes the person he could have been all along. After we hung up, I realized something. Simone's call wasn't really about Marcus. It was about her own guilt, her own process of understanding the past. We all needed to make sense of what had happened in our own ways. Marcus came home from work that night exhausted but animated. Mum, something happened at work today. The regional manager visited, and my supervisor told him about my supply chain coursework. They offered me a position at their corporate office. Real salary, benefits. It's entry level, but it's a career path. Marcus, that's wonderful. I'd have to move out, get my own apartment. I've been saving, and with the new salary I could afford something small. But Mum, I don't want you to think I'm running away again. I'm not leaving because I want to escape. I'm ready to take the next step. This was the moment I'd been hoping for. Not just Marcus surviving, but Marcus building a real life. I think that's exactly what you should do. You do? Yes, you've proven to yourself and to me that you can follow through on commitments. You've been here 7 months, paid rent every month, gone to therapy every week, worked hard at a difficult job. You're ready. But the money I owe you, we'll continue with the payment plan. That doesn't change. But you don't need to live here to honor that debt. You need to live your own life now. He hugged me then, tight and long. Thank you for everything, for not giving up on me, for letting me fail, for catching me when I did, for all of it. That's what parents do, Marcus. The real work of loving someone. 1 year after that devastating phone call, I was sitting on my porch when Marcus pulled up in a modest used car he'd saved for and purchased outright. He was dressed in business casual, khakis and a button-down shirt, the uniform of his new corporate job. "Hey, Mum, brought lunch." He held up a bag from the deli downtown. 6 months after Marcus moved back in, Hugh called with unexpected news. "Lorraine, there's been a development. Someone's been asking questions about your properties, specifically about the holding company structure Vincent created." "Who?" "A private investigator, working for Simone, apparently. She's trying to understand the full scope of Vincent's estate. I think she's wondering if she has any claim to assets from her marriage to Marcus." "Does she?" "No, Marcus never had ownership of anything. He has no assets to split. But I think she's more curious than litigious. She's trying to understand what really happened." "Should I be concerned?" "I don't think so. But I wanted you to be aware." That evening, Simone called. Her voice was different than the last time we'd spoken. Less angry, more contemplative. "Mrs. Mitchell, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I've been thinking about everything that happened. About Marcus, about your family, about the choices we all made." "I don't mind at all, Simone. How are you?" "I'm well. The job in California worked out. I'm actually happy for the first time in years. But I've been carrying guilt about how I left things, about abandoning Marcus when he was at his lowest." "You did what you needed to do for yourself. That's not abandonment." "Maybe. But I've been watching his social media. He's still working at that warehouse, still living with you. Part of me expected him to fall apart completely or to run away again. But he's staying. He's facing it. He is. Is he really changing? Or is this just another performance? I think this time it's real, but only time will tell for certain. Mrs. Mitchell, can I ask you something? The way you handled this whole situation, letting him think you were poor, letting him steal from you, then revealing the truth and making him face consequences, was that planned? Did you deliberately let him hit bottom? I let him experience the natural consequences of his choices, with support but without rescue. That's incredibly brave. Most parents would have just fixed everything. Fixing everything would have fixed nothing. Marcus needed to learn lessons his father and I never taught him. Hard lessons. Well, for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. And I hope Marcus becomes the person he could have been all along. After we hung up, I realized something. Simone's call wasn't really about Marcus. It was about her own guilt, her own process of understanding the past. We all needed to make sense of what had happened in our own ways. Marcus came home from work that night exhausted but animated. Mum, something happened at work today. The regional manager visited, and my supervisor told him about my supply chain coursework. They offered me a position at their corporate office. Real salary, benefits. It's entry level, but it's a career path. Marcus, that's wonderful. I'd have to move out, get my own apartment. I've been saving, and with the new salary, I could afford something small. But Mum, I don't want you to think I'm running away again. I'm not leaving because I want to escape. I'm ready to take the next step. This was the moment I'd been hoping for. Not just Marcus surviving, but Marcus building a real life. I think that's exactly what you should do. You do? Yes. You've proven to yourself and to me that you can follow through on commitments. You've been here 7 months, paid rent every month, gone to therapy every week, worked hard at a difficult job. You're ready. But the money I owe you, we'll continue with the payment plan. That doesn't change, but you don't need to live here to honor that debt. You need to live your own life now. He hugged me then, tight and long. Thank you. For everything. For not giving up on me. For letting me fail. For catching me when I did. For all of it. That's what parents do, Marcus. The real work of loving someone. 1 year after that devastating phone call, I was sitting on my porch when Marcus pulled up in a modest used car he'd saved for and purchased outright. He was dressed in business casual, khakis and a button-down shirt, the uniform of his new corporate job. Hey, Mum, brought lunch. He held up a bag from the deli downtown. That you can make terrible choices without real consequences. Your father and I had protected you from consequences your entire life. It was time for you to experience them. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. I know. It was hard for me too. Watching you struggle. Having the power to fix things and choosing not to. But Marcus, look at where you are now. Look at who you're becoming. That wouldn't have happened if I'd made it easy. He nodded slowly. Thank you. For loving me enough to let me fail. That's the hardest kind of love. It is, but it's also the most important kind. As Marcus prepared to leave, he paused at his car door. Same time next week? I'll be here. I love you, Mum. I love you too, Marcus. I watched him drive away. This man who was once my child, who became a stranger, who was now becoming someone I could respect. Vincent had been right about so many things. About wealth, about character, about the long, difficult work of real love. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. I thought about Vincent's words. Endings can be beautiful. Every closing is also a beginning. This wasn't the ending I'd imagined a year ago. It was better. Because it was real. Hard-won and authentic and built on truth instead of illusion. In the end, the greatest gift I could give my son wasn't money or property or even forgiveness. It was the opportunity to become someone worthy of his own respect. To learn that the house was never what mattered. It was who he became in the process of losing and earning it back. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Thank you for believing I could change, even when I didn't believe it myself. I typed back, "Your father always believed it. I just had to trust his wisdom." And then I added, "He's proud of you, and so am I." Because in the end, that was the truth. Not the money, not the properties, not the revenge or the justice or the lessons. The truth was that love sometimes means letting people fall so they can learn to stand on their own, and that the hardest part of parenting isn't protecting your children from pain, but trusting that they're strong enough to survive it and grow from it. That night, I slept soundly, dreaming of Vincent planting tomatoes, of Marcus laughing on the beach as a child, of all the summers yet to come. The beach house stood empty but full of possibility. The properties generated steady income but stayed in the background where they belonged. And my son was finally, slowly, beautifully, becoming the person he was always meant to be. The moral of this story is simple but profound. True love doesn't always rescue. Sometimes it steps back and allows consequences to teach what comfort never could. The greatest inheritance we can give our children isn't wealth, it's character. And character can only be built through the hard work of facing our failures and choosing to become better. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to help someone you love? Subscribe for more stories about family, forgiveness, and the complicated journey of becoming who we're meant to be.